And Arsenal have got more points than the Invincibles at the same stage. So has this team got echoes of Wenger's title winners?
Beware, though, because Erling Haaland has already outscored last season's Golden Boot winners. Pep says Man City have to adapt to their star striker.
It was also a great weekend for Jared Bowen. He announced that he was having twins on Friday, then scored twice against Everton on Saturday. But does that result leave Frank Lampard's future in doubt?
Let's start with the Gunners, though. They are relentlessly chasing down the title. Would you like me to open it to the floor?
Yes, yeah.
Anybody like to hazard a guess?
Was it the 50th? No.
No.
Is that the last time we beat Man United there?
It wasn't the last time Arsenal beat
No,
Manchester
I know
United.
it is. Well, it was only one of three players to score
that's a
three
different
games in a row.
one, which is the Freddie Ljungberg, Thierry Henry, and Bukayo Saka.
Bukayo Saka.
Have all, that is another stat. This one is that's the last time that Arsenal scored a last-minute winner.
Oh, wow.
In the Premier League, and that was Thierry Henry, 2007, against Manchester United. It's been an awful long time. But the reason we kind of showed you that, one is because it's nice to see Thierry Henry scoring. Two is because it's relevant. And three, like you said, with the stat about Bukayo Saka, and he, in the post-match interview, he said, "Hi Thierry, hi Freddie," and he's acknowledging that. But it feels as though this team, with 50 points at this stage, at the halfway stage, more than the Invincibles managed at this point of the season. It feels like they're starting to emulate some of the great players of the past at Arsenal.
I think what's happening is that they, because they're so organised in the formation and everyone knows what they're doing, I think they're now confident in the positions they're playing, and they're playing well in the position. So we've got players in form, playing in a system that they totally understand. And so it seems like it's just free-flowing, because as much as I'm nervous about, just like Tottenham, nervous for Tottenham, I was nervous for this game, but it's not a nerves where, oh my gosh, how are we going to play? I know how we're going to play, it's just how we're going to perform, because I think that now teams have to come there and they have to beat us, because they're starting fast, everybody's playing well, so the team has to do more to beat Arsenal at the moment. This is what gives me a bit of confidence at the minute.
What was really interesting was the fact that at 2-2, late on in the game, you think maybe, and Manchester United certainly did this, thought, do you know what, a point away from home.
Away by the fact that the youngest team in the Premier League is this, emotionally ready for this situation. I think last season, the way they threw the Champions League places, we thought they were in the driving seat there to go and get into the Champions League, and then they threw it away. All of a sudden, this season, whether it's also maybe a year on with Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko,
absolutely,
look at what happened against Spurs. Not long ago, you look at what happened against United. They're seizing the opportunity. They look ready. Considering they are the youngest team in the league, I find it remarkable how consistent they are. Defensively, they're super sound. The front three, as young as they are, they're fabulous to watch. Odegaard is arguably could be in for player of the season. Partey, there's so much to like about this Arsenal side, but I like the fact that we watched, Wright's Arsenal last 10 years, where when they've been up against it, they've just sunk. And all of a sudden now they don't have that anymore. Last season they did it. This year now, it feels like they're ready for these moments. And I must say, right now, I think it'd be a fabulous story if they were to win the league, because they are a breath of fresh air, and they're a really likeable group of players as well.
Really bubbly, but they seem to have that balance between enjoying the moment and focusing on the next game.
Which they should, and something Owen just said really did sort of pique my interest when he said they're emotionally ready, because last season they went through so much, and they went through so much even the season before, and in the documentary, I always come on and talk about the documentary, but I think it's very, very significant, because it showed those lows that they went through, it showed all the disappointment of missing out on the top four, and it showed all the key decisions that they had to make to get to this point. And now when you look at the team, they look like not just a team but a squad of players with the right mentality, and as you say, knowing when to enjoy the moment. And there have been lots of significant moments. I know people kind of poked fun at them for celebrating wins against the so-called smaller teams, but you have to do that to be able to celebrate the context of this particular win. And if you look at what they've done so far this season, they've beaten Liverpool, they've beaten Chelsea, they've beaten Spurs home and away, and now they've beaten Manchester United. These are statement victories. So when us guys in the press write about Arsenal, it's a new perception of Arsenal that you've got. And I think this is the strongest iteration of Arsenal since the Invincibles. I know you mentioned them at the top of the show, but that's with some justification, because they're racking up the points. They've got the character, the consistency, they've got the depth. And to, really start to talk about teams, you've been at Manchester United when they were good. I want to be a bit more analytical than that.
you can see when they're doing huddles and they're talking, as much as Erdegaard's the captain, is Zinchenko's leading those talks. And like you said, they're very excited and they're very calm. You see the two young guys doing the interview afterwards, Eddie Nketiah and Bukayo Saka, and they're very level in how they're speaking. They're not getting too carried away with it.
Right, can I ask you, when you won the league, how many players were in double figures?
I think myself and Nelka. I can't remember how many more. I can't remember how many more were in double figures than that, because you're looking at our goals at the moment, it wasn't dependent on anyone, because remember, I was injured for a while in that season as well, so Anelka came in and, you know what I mean, he's doing that Eddie Nketiah, he just like hit the ground running. And what's happening now is like, I think with the excitement, and when you listen to Zinchenko's interview afterwards, he was talking about the whole club, you know, the people who are working, still working. You go to the club in the morning, you leave, you come back in the evening, people are still working. All of those people are working hard, we're working hard, the people upstairs are working hard, everybody, the fans, everybody's together. He said that in his huddle, he was saying, you have to recognise and enjoy the moments of what's going on. I think him and Jesus, and you saw how both animated they were after the game and how happy they were with the celebration, is because they're kind of saluting the hard work and what happens when you do the hard work and what comes from it. So that's what keeps them going.
You mentioned the Invincibles there. Now, the question isn't, can this side be compared to the Invincibles? But for Arsenal, after 19 Premier League games, so at the halfway stage, it's also worth pointing out, I mean, the obvious one is this side have lost a game, which obviously the Invincibles didn't do all season. The other thing is, although they're halfway through, they haven't played everybody. There's still 2 games to come against Manchester City. But there's more goals this time around. They're not drawing as many matches. And so that's why they've got more points, even though they've lost a game. And the Invincibles were in second place. This Arsenal side are leading a table that includes Manchester City. That feels like, remember we were talking last week about how Arsenal seem to have ticked everything off this season. What they need is a last-minute winner. They need that kind of that sort of impetus to take them into. The next hurdle is going to be the games against Manchester City. There's one in April and there's one coming up in mid-Feb. Yeah,
and what's good about those games coming is that they'll be looking forward to it. I've got playing them in a cup as well.
Yeah.
They'll be looking forward to playing them because the way they're playing at the moment, like I say, everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody, that proper, I know you mentioned statement victories, but that will be a proper statement victory, just like when Leicester beat City, when they went on to win it, beat them 3-1 at the Etihad. It was a kind of result where I was at home and I said, yeah, they can do it. I think that Arsenal will believe that, yes, what we're doing now and how well we're playing, we've got to keep doing that. But if they can beat City and put in a good show against City and it's a good, then they'll start to properly believe themselves. Because I don't think they don't believe themselves now, but they need those games. They're the only team they've not played yet out of the top teams. And that's the one where they can get their real barometer of where they are.
Has Nketiah surprised you?
He has surprised me a little bit. I thought I was delighted at the point of leaving Arsenal in the current climate with the way they're moving, the trajectory, and I was moving forward to go somewhere where you want to try and get the same things. You want to try and get Champions League. You want to be a first-team player. And where is he going to go at this stage to get that? So when he signed the contract, I was delighted. I thought that, you know what, Jesus will play, but he's going to have to, at some stage, get into the team and prove his worth. Because Arsenal said, we're willing to pay you what we're going to pay you for 5 years. But at some stage, he's going to have to get his chance now. He's got it through Jesus. And if we're going to be totally honest, he's taking it. I watched him against Tottenham and I was really disappointed for him, missing the 2 chances what he had to in a game of that stature. That's going to take him somewhere else in the way he's thinking. So I'm pleased. Yes, he has surprised me, but his all-round game has improved. Everything's improved.
He scored the second of his 2 goals in the FA Cup game against Oxford. Was a superb finish, and it was a real mark of a player who's at the top of his game in terms of confidence. He got through on goal. It was a diagonal effort. He lifted it very gently over the goalkeeper. He seemed as though he had all the time and space in the world, and he didn't. But it just suggests...
He played like somebody who knows he's not getting taken off.
Absolutely. And that was
that's
the key.
A good point, actually.
Yeah, that's the way it is, though. And when you're a striker, there does come a time where you feel, I'm not the one they're taking off. And that is what he's got to do until Jesus comes back, because you have to believe that when Jesus comes back and he's fit, of course he's going to integrate him back in, and Eddie probably will.
You come through and everybody sees you as a young guy. You know, you're probably not ready. You didn't cost 50 million, you didn't cost 60 million. You're not from South America. So really, I think now his teammates are going to see him in a different light. as much as they probably love him and they respect him, when you score 2 goals against Manchester United like that, you put yourself in a different category. You're not just you're not an academy player anymore. You're an established player. You're one you can rely on. And again, to the point that when Gabriel Jesus comes back, you could probably flip a coin. Is he going to walk back into the side? And that is, I've been blown away by his progression. And I think the confidence, you see him now, he's gone there, he's gone there. And I'm sure next week he's going to come out onto the pitch with a big strut because he's having himself.
Because now, they're 2 different kind of goal scorers. He is very much a box goal scorer. He'll score in the box, like his second goal. Obviously, people give Wan-Bissaka a lot of stick, and he should get that. He should be seen where he is. But it's his movement there to get that goal and to be in the right position for the winner as well. Those are the things that, Jesus, that's not natural to Jesus' game. Jesus is a very hard worker, scores great goals, but Eddie is a goal getter.
And it's interesting that us in the press, when we look at players like Eddie Nketiah, I think you're right. There is a different perception of him now. I was watching a documentary, a Premier League documentary actually, about Michael Owen, and he was talking about the way, or senior pros in his dressing room at Liverpool were talking about the way he was up against, and he'd earned that respect even though he was just a boy at the time. And I was thinking of that when you were talking about Nketiah, because I think in real time we are seeing the transformation of his perception from the kid, the one who's not quite fashionable. And you guys as ex-pros, you probably will have players in dressing rooms you played with who
that moment will change his whole trajectory of his career. Those 2 goals on the weekend. I remember I played against Luis Figo in my first big game, and I remember looking across and he was there on the tunnel. I remember thinking, I'm in trouble here. It's Luis Figo. But after the game we won, and it made me realize you can go up against these guys and you can win. It doesn't mean you're a better player, but you have to be able to find a way to impact a game of that magnitude. And I think Eddie now, he'll see himself in the tunnel with the boys and think, I'm equal now.
And the opposing players will look at him as somebody as he's dangerous. Respect. Comes back, he's got to be looking to score in every game and continue to play. He's playing and give the manager a real problem.
But now us in the media, we don't look at him as, he's the standing guy.
Because he was until last week, wasn't he?
Absolutely. But now we look at him as he is the guy. If Jesus isn't there, this is a guy, 7 goals in his last 7 games. Doesn't matter who the opposition is. He is a guy who has the confidence to be able to represent himself well. And I think as far as Arsenal are concerned, he has saved them a fortune.
You know what he's done as well, Kels? He's somebody that's he's been patient for the chance. We say, listen, you've got hard work and preparation. That's what's going to get you ready for your opportunity. And what I'm pleased is that the opportunity is here and we're seeing somebody taking it, even though he's not the main number 9. And that is what you have to do. It's like you look at Emi Martinez at Villa, recognising when his opportunity's come along, taking his opportunity, and then bam, look where it's gone for him. And this is what I love to see when a player has worked hard, got himself in a position where he knows he's number 2. I'm not going to be the main guy, but at some stage my chance is going to come, and I've got to take it. He's taking it at the moment.
I like that comparison. Eddie Nketiah is going to win
the World Cup.
In the World Cup.
He's going to score the winning goal. He's going to score the winning goal.
He's going to be the significant player
for England in the World Cup.
And one player, another academy player at Arsenal, who's just absolutely lighting up the Premier League at the moment is Bukayo, and carried on improving.
He's one that they have to manage, and this is why you want to see. That's why you see, I think Trossard is a fantastic signing. Play anywhere up front there. If anything happens, and you do need to rest the Bukayo Saka, which I think at some stage is going to have to happen, because obviously coming off of a great World Cup for himself, leading into the World Cup, he's brilliant. He's brilliant now, and we're talking about somebody at some stage is probably going to need a little bit of managing. So, for ability-wise, and the way he is, and the way he's just taking everything in his stride, Kels, he's a model professional at his age. He's a model professional, and we're very, very fortunate to have him. I can't say enough about him in respects of what he's doing and how grounded he is, and how great it is for us at the moment to have a player like that. Because I remember saying to people, I might have gone a bit over the top saying he's a generational.
I'd be amazed if you did.
Going over to saying a generational talent, but for Arsenal and coming out of Arsenal's academy, everybody who ever saw him said he's going all the way, and they were right. He's doing it. He's proving it.
You know what I find, Wright? I find surprising about him when you look at young kids when they play. Especially the always rushing. They're going a bit too quick. Bukayo is the opposite. he slows down in the key moments. He reminds me a bit of Riyad Mahrez in the sense, he's just looking for a little moment, a little body shift. And that I find for a kid, is he 21? That is very rare for him to play with that much emotional intelligence. And that's why I think maybe, in fact, I don't think he overexerts himself like a lot of the young kids running around. I know I was just running around like a madman. And I think he plays within him, just like he's having the best time out there.
Yeah. Well, they're winning, so he is having the best time out there.
But he is, I love the fact that he is completely himself. He talks about his faith. He talks about reading his Bible every night. He's a archetypal boy next door, and also representative of the club and the fan base, and so there is a lot of warmth and love for him. I'd say if he would probably get more credit than he is receiving if he was Spanish or Brazilian, because I think he's every bit as good as a Rodrigo or a Vinicius Jr. That's a big comparison. But when you look at the goals he scored, the opposition he scored it against, the emotional intelligence, the positional play, his ability to read the game as well, the caliber of opponent that he's been influential against in the World Cup, he was the best player on a pitch where Kylian Mbappe was. In England's game against France, you realise he is a generational talent, and Arsenal have nurtured him superbly. Well, there have been times when maybe he's had a little bit too much on his shoulders, but he was able to carry that in that period where Arsenal were under a lot of pressure and he was scoring big goals. The next thing they've got to do is tie him down to a long-term contract.
I think that's probably next. That's probably next.
And it's probably not that hard to do for a boyhood Arsenal fan who's been at the club. Ian Nketiah, signed for the club at 14, wears the number 14 shirt, and scored his 14th goal in all competitions of the season, potentially on the way to winning Arsenal their 14th title.
Wow, and there's so many 14s.
Nice, isn't it? It's not relevant for anything, but it's just a nice thing. Mikel Arteta booked for being exuberant, overly exuberant on the touch, basically for running the length of his own area.
He's never inside it.
He's not inside it. But, I mean, does anybody care strongly about this?
No, I absolutely don't care. I think there's no problem. I think this is referees probably looking at too much social media, because Arteta is doing nothing wrong there. He's on top of his place.
Well, he's outside his technical area.
Okay,
but the whole is pointless anyway.
Exactly. The whole concept is just...
something, Darren?
Managers observe it. Sorry,
Darren, the thing with it is that since Mikel's come in and he's been at the Etihad or any game that you watch, if he doesn't see what he wants to see, when he's watching that game, he's acting exactly the same. If we wind this back to his first couple of games at Arsenal and he's on the line, he's probably doing exactly the same thing. I think the fact that it's now something that you can pile on, is the manager too overexuberant? Is he too emotional? That's another thing they're going to pile into the mix of, well, can they see it through if their manager's acting like this? The players are used to seeing Mikel act like he is. Mikel's only...
Opposition are up against. They used to be managed by the most demonstrative manager in the history of English football, in Sir Alex Ferguson. He was always in
a different way, though, from Arteta. He wasn't running necessarily the length of his touchline.
But I think in a worse way, because he was in the faces of fourth officials, and there are images galore of him in the faces of assistant referees, as they were at the time, referees themselves. His players were really, because they took their cues from him. We saw that iconic picture of Roy Keane and his veins straining in his neck as he's shouting at Andy D'Urso, and there's a direct correlation between his behaviour on the touchline and the United players. I don't think Arteta is as bad as that. He's just a very demonstrative manager with a young side that he needs to micromanage to keep them up to their work. The underachieving older players who didn't want to listen to it, the demonstrative nature of his demeanour on the touchline keeps his players energised.
I think if you're a player and you look at your manager and he cares as much as some of the fans do up there cheering and the players do, I think it's a good marriage in a way. I think often you look at the manager, you're not doing anything, you think, come on, lad, we're a teammate. So I think in a way, as long as it's not too much, I think the lads probably would respect the fact that the manager's kind of all in.
Ten Hag is a slightly calmer figure on the touchline, but it seems to be working for Manchester United. But what did they take out of the defeat by Arsenal?
I think you just attacked. Yeah. I mean, obviously everything's running around Marcus Rashford, and he's probably in the form of his life. But outside of him, it didn't really look like anybody else was going to score. I thought they played really well. I think the job that he's done, I think, has been spectacular. Coming in and steadying the ship. Obviously, no Casemiro. had a big impact. But defensively, I think Man United are a good side. I think top 4 is almost a certainty now. But it just feels like it needs a bit of firepower at the top of the pitch. And Weghorst has come in. I know he's going to play a different role, so Marcus can play off the left. But the Emirates.
I'd have gone with Garnacho.
I love Garnacho.
Yeah, I'd have gone with him because I'm yet to see it from Anthony. I know he scored in his debut against us, and he looks like, but I'm not seeing enough at the moment to think to myself, well, he's going to be the one, especially in that game yesterday, that was going to help them. I would thought Garnacho, who is very good one-on-one, can take people on, very good in that situation. I thought he would have got a game, but when I looked at the way Man United are playing, there's more structure, there's more pattern to it, and you could see with the spaces that were sometimes left in the midfield, and now Arsenal were able to continue to just attack Man United. What was it, 63 touches in the box? It's a lot Arsenal had. Yesterday it was quite a dominant performance, but at the same time, if Manchester United had somebody else with Marcus Rashford, somebody as potent, it could have been a good game for them because counter-attack-wise, they could have really...
To come back, we will talk about it and we'll raise that point a little bit later on as well. But is it just a mark of where Manchester United are? Is it that simple, that result, the performance? It wasn't bad, it was a good performance, it just wasn't quite there.
You know what I liked? I liked that Ten Hag, after the game, held them accountable. There's no celebration, and he didn't say we play great. He said, if we want to be champions, we got to do better. And that's the standards that he set. If you're not going to have the standards, you're not going to be there. And I like the fact, it was a good game, a really good game. But actually, it wasn't good enough. And I think he's going to take them
They missed a player like you. They didn't have enough class in the midfield. So I'm embarrassing you a bit, but McTominay and Fred, lots of industry, but no Casemiro. Casemiro reads the game better, protects the back four better, much more energy, and doesn't just hoof it, but when he gets the ball, he actually picks out a pass. His distribution's far better. And if you're looking at, you can assess how they played in the middle of the park, but I just don't think there was enough there.
There was
game, and I think obviously if Casemiro's there, it's slightly different, but they need a bit more in there. And I think at the top of the pitch, and maybe a young central midfielder, maybe Jude. We're throwing out names here. That, Bellingham wouldn't be bad in there. I think so. But United are on a really good way.
Yeah. Jude Bellingham. Everybody wants Jude Bellingham at the moment. He has the world at his feet. But as for us.